Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Swing Batter where we dive into the dirty contracts of Major League Baseball. Dad, who do you have for us this evening?
Well, I find this a little bit complicated. I'm going to do Alex Rodriguez.
Ooh, Alex Rodriguez. Now we have several to choose from. We have the Alex Rodriguez with the Texas Rangers for 10 years, $252 million. We also have Alex Rodriguez with the Yankees for 10 years, $275 million. Which contract are we going to dive into today?
I don't know, Todd, what do you think? Are we going to focus on the last one?
Why don't we do both and I can talk about the imaginary contract he was going to sign with the New York Mets before he went to Texas.
So Todd, before he signs with Texas, he's playing for Seattle. What happens to the money in Texas? And what about the Mets you're talking about? He could have signed with a team in New York right away. So he's playing in the Seattle Mariners, the wonderful area full of media attention. And everybody watches the Seattle games on the East Coast because they come on at 10:30 East Coast time when they start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, he's there. He's the, basically the heir apparent to Ken Griffey Jr. He and Ken Griffey are, slashing home runs, doing the thing. And I remember at the time in 2000, a friend of mine who was an Olympic athlete, I asked him who was the best athlete in all of sports. And he didn't even pause. He said, Alex Rodriguez in the year 2000. He says he is the best athlete in all of sports right now. The guy is incredible. So in December of 2000, he signs a 10-year, $252 million contract with the Texas Rangers, the largest contract in sports history at the time. I remember at the time I was really excited about the possibility of him coming to the New York Mets. I know the Mets made a big play for him. There was talk of billboards when he came to town, putting those up and making just a big deal. And the Wilpons were ready to spend money, but we would have to settle on Bobby Bonilla. So instead he goes to the Texas Rangers.
So we get it as we unwrap Arod. How did he do on Seattle to even justify the stop the presses kind of a deal, Dad?
Well, it's hard to imagine how really amazing this guy was. Imagine your home team, it's never been to a World Series, the Seattle Mariners, with a 21-year-old shortstop who's hitting .358 when he's 21 years old, with 36 home runs and 123 RBIs. At that point, you got to figure this is it. I mean, this guy's incredible. He followed that up with 4 more years. He had 5 really good years with the Mariners. I mean, his numbers were amazing. He had 132 RBIs once. He had 41 home runs in that year. His batting average was, except for 1 year at 285, always over 300. I mean, we're talking about a shortstop hitting 35, 40 home runs and driving in a lot of runs. It was unbelievable, the talent of this guy. But he ended up leaving them to go to the Rangers. Todd, how did that happen?
Well, he was so good in Seattle. Everybody knew as a free agent he was going to be completely unaffordable for Seattle unless he made concessions and said he wanted to stay in the Pacific Northwest with Ken Griffey Jr. and the rest of the team. So I really thought we had a chance of signing him with the New York Mets. There was talk of putting billboards around town when he came to town. And, the Wilpons we thought we could get him at $200 million for 8 years, I think were the numbers that we were throwing around. Then in December, we find out he signs with the Texas Rangers for $252 million over the course of 10 years in December of 2000. This is the biggest contract in all of sports history at the time. Bigger than any soccer contract, bigger than any Formula One contract, bigger than any football contract. This was it. This was the biggest one, and the Texas Rangers took this on. His average annual salary was $25.2 million. He had a full no-trade clause. He could veto any trade proposal that he wanted. And there were performance bonuses that he had for MVP awards, all-star selections, which were virtually guaranteed at the time just because of his celebrity status. He also, go ahead.
He played 3 of the 10 years with Texas, and in those 3 years, remember, we're talking about a 26-year-old shortstop. He hit 52, 57, and 47 home runs with a low RBI season of 118. Low. Those years were monstrous.
And this was during the whole Barry Bonds onslaught, but this guy was almost like, there were people talking that this guy realistically had a chance at 850 career home runs if he kept up the pace that he was on. He had an opt-out clause after the 7th season. So in 2007, he had the ability to opt out of this contract. Something happened with the Rangers, and they got the idea that financially this contract was not managing what they needed to with this guy. They probably thought they were going to get to a World Series. They probably thought they were going to get something out of it. But Dad, like you said, he played 3 seasons with them. And then the next thing you know, they go to Boston and they're in contracts for this mega deal to trade Arod to the Boston Red Sox. Who were the Boston Red Sox going to send to Texas in return? Do you remember this?
No.
It was Manny Ramirez was going to end up on the Texas Rangers, and Arod was going to end up on the Red Sox. And I think the Red Sox were going to send somebody, Nomar Garciaparra, to the White Sox. Brendan, do you have the details on this one?
That is, the Red Sox were certainly going to give away quite a bit. And Manny Ramirez, obviously, fan favorite. The biggest thing that hurt that trade was the fact that they were renegotiating his total dollar amount, and they were negotiating it down, which the Players Union and Major League Baseball did not want to see happen because they didn't want people restructuring contracts and losing dollars off the contract. Now, for those that weren't alive or weren't around for this contract, I remember everything stopped when this occurred. And then when everyone's asking, like, why would Texas get rid of such a great player? Well, there's some percentages here that I like to look at, especially when you look at contracts. Arod started that first year with the Texas Rangers as 27% of the total team's salary. One player, 27%. He proceeded to drop down to about 22, 23, then back up to 24%. When they, again, finished this trade-off, the team's overall salary went down to $55 million for the Texas Rangers. So when they did this deal and they paid all this money, everyone asked, how can they afford it? They couldn't. They leveraged this deal through the roof, and then they hoped that this would, again, give them some great joy, and it didn't give them that because all their money was in one player, and they couldn't add any pieces to it, which everyone knows pitching is very important, and so on and so forth. So that's why they were desperate to seek a team that could afford to take on this burden, because nobody can take on this burden, because it wasn't like he had 2 years left, 3 years left. This was a lot of money left over on this deal. They had only paid $66 million of the $252 owed. So they would need to talk to the big boys. And that's all you can deal with, which means you're trading at a deficit, which the Rangers did.
And then they ended up trading him to the only team that could handle a contract like that, New York Yankees. And what did the Yankees gave up? Their protege, second baseman, Alfonso Soriano. Soriano was stealing bases, hitting home runs. I think he flirted with, or did he had a 40-40 season. He's one of the guys that flirted with that. So he comes into the Yankees, and Dad, how was his performance at the Yankees in 2004? By the way, the Boston Red Sox won the World Series in 2004 when they didn't make that trade. So how did Arod do on the Yankees?
Well, his average was for him a little on the low side at 286. But the other numbers were certainly impressive. 36 home runs, 106 RBIs. Not what he did at the Rangers, but certainly, I would say, all-star caliber. It was in the second year with 2005, he cranked it up with 48 home runs and batted .321. And that was, more like what he did with the Rangers.
And just so everybody knows who's playing with what money, because I'm a big fan of the money deals here. So he's 23 to 25% of the team's total salary. He goes to the Yankees, and he's hovering right around 13 to 14% of the Yankees' total team salary. So yes, they could carry the burden. He's not that large of a burden. However, he is still the highest paid Yankee currently before the next deal. He is the highest paid Yankee each year that he is playing under the old deal.
Yeah, and then he's crushing it in 2005, 2006. Well, how do you do in 2007?
It's interesting. My question is, when did the Yankees redo the deal?
After 2007.
He just did the setup for you.
I should have known that. 2007, working for a new deal, he hit 54 home runs, drove in 156 RBIs, batted .314, and just led baseball in everything. Then he got new money and never did it again.
So after 2007, here's the best part.
Timeout. Say those numbers again, just for all the people to soak that in. Those numbers are absurd.
54 home runs, 156 RBIs, .314 batting average.
Okay, so this is the regular season we're talking about, because everybody knows as Yankee fans, you only count if it's in the postseason. Now, 2007, they did go to the postseason, and does anybody want to talk about that wonderful one series wonder that they were?
Oh, that 2007, he won the third MVP.
Proceeded to hit.
They were eliminated in the division series.
They were eliminated in the very first round. They only played one series. In 2007, they lost to Cleveland in 4 games. He batted .267, 1 home run, 1 RBI. Insignificant stats all the way around for a player, again, who had, I believe, did you say 156 RBIs?
Yeah, I did.
And he got 1 in 4 games. So this may have started to break apart the Arod lore, because I believe he also said in the postseason that he was itching. He had that itch.
He was such a generous human being and so not, trying to make a black hole of attention for himself, that during the World Series, nobody ever does this, Arod did, he announced he was opting out of his contract, causing everybody to ignore the World Series, to ignore the fact that the housing market was collapsing, to ignore the fact that Bear Stearns was going out of business. Arod says, I'm opting out of my contract. He then proceeds, because the Yankees get so angry about this and the way that he handles it, he then proceeds to tell Scott Boras he refuses to negotiate through Scott Boras, his agent, and goes directly to the Yankees and negotiates for a 10-year deal. I think he's 31 years old at this point. Negotiates for a 10-year deal at $275 million. Because nothing says value like a 31-year-old getting a 10-year contract. So $275 million with $30 million of additional possible performance-based bonuses if he hits 660 home runs, 714, and 755. So if he breaks the all-time home run record, the guy is adding money onto this thing like crazy.
So here we come to swing batter.
Right.
This is a swing batter contract. You could see it coming. His age, how much money it is. Let me just tell you a couple highlights. Arod, 54 home runs. Do you know after he signed that contract, he never hit 40 again?
That's incredible.
Crashed down. And you could see it. He batted .302. This is after the new contract. .302, .286, and then never hit .286 again. So we are dealing with a totally different ball player who's making more money than he ever did before. That's what we call a swing batter contract. To accentuate it, I'm going to ask my 2 sons to talk about Arod in the playoffs.
He was great in the playoffs. I mean, he had fantastic stats. In 2009, the Yankees won the World Series, and it was Arod and his stellar performance over the course of 15 games, or 18, he had like 18 RBIs in 15 games. It's 6 home runs. Arod was all over the playoffs in 2009. I don't think the Yankees could have won without him. In fact, when he stood up to receive his MVP of the World Series, what did he say? I'd like to introduce Hideki Matsui. That's who won the MVP in 2009.
My favorite stat of Arod and Matsui is the fact that Arod had 6 RBIs in the World Series, the whole World Series, and Matsui had 6 RBIs in the deciding Game 6. So,
and the best part is that I think it was the bottom of the third with the bases jacked and 1 out. Arod comes to the plate and strikes out looking. The next batter is Matsui, who hits a single, scores 2 runs, and he had already previously hit a home run to knock in Arod. Not a good look.
Arod infuriated the Yankees. He came in the time that Jeter was Mr. Clutch. He struck out looking way too much. He always was.
No, Arod struck out looking way too much, not Mr. Clutch.
Correct. Arod did the opposite of what Jeter would do. Like, you name it, he's known for the running by the outfielder, hitting his glove, running by the pitcher, hitting his glove, trying to get anything he could to get on base. I still remember the fiasco that he literally punched the ball out like a football player and proceeded to run to second like it was all accidental. Everything was normal there. Thank God they had replay because they called him out. There are years of this that he just continued this cycle. The shocking thing to me about A-Rod's 10-year deal is not the fact that he hit the lump, if you will, in your 30s, or the fact that he started to stumble. It's the fact that he was never clutch to begin with in these big moments. He was clutch for contracts, and baseball will be forever grateful for him because he certainly popped open the lid of $200+ million deals. He also opted out in 2007 at the correct age of 31, which is the most attractive time to give the most money to players. And that's where we get to the swing batter aspect of this, because towards the end of this, there's so much flavor behind this. There's the scandal. He gets suspended for a season. That's where you could argue this isn't that bad of a contract because we didn't have to pay him for 1 whole season. That's a big savings overall. But at the end of
you did pay him for the last season that you didn't play.
It's all a wash. This is a swing batter deal. Yes, he's better than most. He did perform. He did play. They did still pay him to go take a shower and get out, and they made him part of the team, and they accept him as part of the Yankee overall foundation or charity, whatever you want to call it, Boys and Girls Club of Yankee players that get brought back in, that they are beloved. He just never captured the heart of the Yankees.
Halfway through the contract in the playoffs in 2012, he was benched. $275 million, and you benched him.
Great.
Benched him.
It's a great manager. It's a strong manager to convince everybody that I need to bench him if we're going to do anything good. Yeah, it's a story and we have lots of these, and this is the Arod deal. Again, I remember the $252 million. I remember everybody thinking this is wild, and I also remember everyone thinking, how the heck did Texas pull this off? Because no one thought Texas had the money. Clearly they didn't. They were hemorrhaging everywhere. And so then he ends up at the Yankees or, Boston or whomever, and that's just the way it goes. And this is what ends up happening.
If Tolstoy had written a swing batter contract, this would be it.
It does dive bomb.
At the age of 41, with 2 years left on the contract, the Yankees paid Arod to be an advisor. But don't put a uniform on. So that just kind of summarizes where we're at.
Maybe the wrong Russian author. It's more like Chekhov. Like, the contract is there. It's going to be used, but you're an advisor.
The good news about Alex Rodriguez is he has gone on to announce at baseball games. He's continued to be a product of Major League Baseball. The sports media love him. He is not at all hated by many folks, other than, I would say, Yankee fans who had to deal with the walk away after call strike 3 and the playoffs and all of the horror of that. What is shocking to me is that he still wants the limelight. One would have thought he was pretty happy and walk away, but he still lives for it. God bless him for that. We all know the different path that Derek Jeter took post his Yankee career. So this is what you get, ladies and
One
gentlemen.
could say by his tanning regimen that he likes the limelight a little too much.
Set that one up on a platter. Well, there you have it, folks. Feel free to send us a comment. Tell us other players that you'd like us to evaluate for Swing Batter contracts. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like us. And that's the Arod story. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Todd.